of the box and thinking out of the box, because it reminded me that we sometimes need to also be careful that we're not thinking outside of a little box, inside a bigger box. And sometimes we can be inside a small box, inside a medium-sized box, inside of an even bigger box. And so we have to think about that. And earlier, right before the whole thing started, I was approached by a wonderful young man who told me that today they launched a website called Mina University. And Mina University is basically meant to be a clearinghouse for lectures, presentations, courses, and so on, having to do with the Mina region. And I know they intend to have a lot of Arabic content on that site as well. And that was amazing to me, because that also reminded me that the majority of stuff, that information, let's say, that students are trying to jam into their heads in high school, and actually to a large extent now in undergraduate education, is now available for free on the internet. Literally, the value of that information has actually gone down to zero. It's free. And so you don't have to pay a lot of money for a big private school education to get that information. So what is it that's important? It's not anymore the information and having the information. It's what you can do with what you know. It's what you do with the information that you have. It's really, how do you add value to what you do? And how is this relevant to assessment? It's extremely relevant, because as was pointed out earlier by a couple of the speakers, we assess what we value. So assessment is a value system. I'll say a little bit more about that later. But I want us to try to expand our notion of what assessment is to be bigger than just thinking about assessment as testing. Assessment is actually, at its most fundamental heart, it's a learning process. It's a process of making sense. The most effective kinds of assessment processes and tools are those that engage the learner in a learning process, those that advance learning. These are the most effective kind of assessment tools. But it is also a value system, as I said earlier, and it communicates what is valued. Today, the dominant paradigm in education is this delivery paradigm. The teacher delivers content to the students. They receive it. I even heard that word used earlier. Students receive the content. They figure out how to memorize it, how to remember it. We give them tests to see how much they remember without consulting any other resources, and then we go on from there. So what's valued in that type of system? What is valued in that type of system? Memory. Comprehension and memory were mentioned.
Copy-pasting.
Yeah, copy-pasting can be a good result of that. Okay, so those are the kinds of things. Routinizing things, getting things to be routine, getting practice until you don't have to think about it anymore, so that you can get a good grade on the test. Not going outside the material that's being tested is another result of that. So that system actually that's what really, if we looked at it as a value system, that looks like that's what we really value. I'm not sure that's what we really value. Is that what we really value? No. Is that what we value? No. Just memorizing and spitting things back out? No. I don't think anybody would say yes to that question. I hope not anyways right now. But so you know, I was an A student in my career from the beginning. A++, in fact, I took even a graduate mathematics course when I had first entered graduate school. I was 4 years out after my undergraduate, and I went back to graduate school and they made me take a graduate math class because I wanted to be in math ed. And I got an A+. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked because I knew that I did not know that stuff. Has that ever happened to any of you?
Yes.
Have you ever taken a test and you came out and then you got the results and you were like, whew, thank God, because you didn't expect to do that well? Have you ever had the opposite happen, where you were very confident and you went in and you came out and got the result and it was like, whoa, I really knew that, what happened? And you're bewildered. You're just bewildered. When that happens to you, do you ever go back and try to actually learn the stuff that you didn't do well on? Usually not. You just kind of usually leave it behind. Many of you actually grew up in a system where you learned Arabic in a very, very structured way. In fact, I'm told all the time how Arabic has to be taught a certain way or students won't learn it. How many of you, if I asked you to write a letter in Arabic tonight, would do it, would be able to do it? Raise your hand. In informal Arabic. Of course, really. You know, when I first came to Lebanon, I wanted to do research in schools, in mathematics classrooms in schools, and I prepared a budget for my project. And, you know, I thought to myself, I'm surrounded by native Arabic speakers, so I don't need to budget for translation. Wrong. All I wanted was just somebody to draft me a simple letter to send out to schools to invite them to come to a meeting. Nobody would do it. None of my graduate students, not even my colleagues. Nobody would do it. Still today, even in our school, where we have lots of strong Arabic writers, sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 people to go through something in order to get it to where everybody will agree that it's good. Okay, and all these people had that same education. Wow. So I'm leaving you to think about that. Okay, what does that mean? So, you know, this system, this delivery model, you know, it doesn't necessarily create learners. It definitely creates people who know something, because everybody does know something, but it not necessarily creates the lifelong learners that I think we're always after. And in terms of if we look at what are we actually valuing there, are we really valuing creativity and innovation? This is the big question. So one of the things that I think is important to think about is that, you know, if we're going to have assessment that actually promotes innovation and creativity, it needs to be the kind of assessment that makes the learner the center of it. The learner's thinking has to be the center of it. This kind of assessment has to make the learner's thinking visible to everybody so that it can be looked at, reflected on, talked about, even debated, and interpreted. So that the learner, him or herself, and their teachers and any other people working with them, guiding them, can actually get an idea of where they are and where they need to go. But we need to see their thinking visible, or we cannot really do this very well. And that, what I just said, also something important there, is that the learner is in the center of it. They're part of it. They're part of a process. It's not something done to them, it's something they're doing. And this is something that's really important, because, you know, if I'm going to try to improve my own thinking, be a responsible learner, be an independent learner, collaborate with others, and so on, I have to be able to make my thinking visible to others. And I have to be able to inspect other people's thinking as well, and put those things together. So this is very important. And self-assessment is probably one of the most powerful versions of assessment that is the least valued. We overvalue test scores at the expense of other kinds of assessment that are actually more powerful, more valuable. I want to read to you something that was written by a child. And this is actually a self-assessment of this child's learning. This person wrote this at the end of a school year. This year was simply the most academic year of my life. Other than the skills, problem solving, and the rapidity and ease in work, I was taught commitment. This year and all of its lessons pushed me to escalate to a point where my commitment, how much I care about my work, and my love for learning was amplified. The year commenced with our lessons about global health. I took off in a quick manner. I learned about the heinous past of our world that was and remains chock full of lethal diseases that crippled the world and its people in a matter of mere seconds. The disease that we mainly focused on was the Black Death, which was the greatest disaster and obstacle man has ever faced. We learned about it in excruciating detail. We read many bodies of literature by people who survived this plague. Then we moved on to the types of diseases the average man acquires, the The facts I obtained in this unit are immense and boosted my common knowledge of things interrelated to health history and how to protect myself from any disease. The summative assessment required for this unit was simple yet amusing. We made a video about a certain illness that we chose to talk about. Subsequently, we moved on to the digital divide. This was an extremely interesting and fun topic to inquire and write about. The fact that I was learning about this modern crisis made everything in me grow and develop, especially how much I care about the elderly and the less fortunate in terms of education, technology, and an international perspective concerning all things. While ending this unit, we were required to write a letter to our children about how our parents use technology. I believe mine was pretty advanced, and it was an exceeds paper. And right at this moment, we're in the midst of learning about disasters and emergencies. I'm benefiting to a colossal extent from this unit because it taught me certain noteworthy procedures to take into deep consideration whence a disaster may occur. We are also learning about the plenteous types of disasters, both natural and man-made. The unit taught me how to improve the structure of my essays and how to avoid run-on sentences. I learned how to stop being repetitive in my writing and add more statistics in a reader-friendly manner, and improve placement of my vocabulary to give a certain symphony and more flavor to my writing. We also learned about what equipment is crucial in a time of disaster and what to do if we fall victim. To wrap this up, I believe this year was the most intriguing and beneficial year of my life. I learned how to be extremely organized. I became a perfectionist. I adopted new methods and techniques to strengthen my writing, debate skills, law, and political knowledge. I have great ambitions. I want to be an international lawyer. And I got a chance to study it and read books concerning international law because of my English teacher. Thank you for building my future. I don't know if this child is going, I don't know how he's going to do on his official exams, and I don't know how he's going to do on his SATs and so on. I don't even know if he's going to, pass his grade level. I have no idea. But what I do know from this is that he's somebody who can play with his knowledge. He's somebody who thinks internationally. He understands that what he's learning is in a context, a global context. He actually has a pretty good command of vocabulary and grammar. I can tell that from his writing. I also know that if we're not careful, he's going to get bored quickly. In fact, I detect a little sarcasm in some of what he wrote. I think he maybe is already getting there a little bit. He's in 7th grade. Okay? He's in 7th grade. All right? So listen, we all need to get on board. Knowledge production, creativity, innovation, it's the new capital. Whether we like it or not, it's the new capital. The innovation is the new capital, not the information from the past. The schooling industry, the textbook industry, the tutoring industry, the testing industry is pretty much all about managing and controlling the past. And we have to stop doing that. Otherwise, school is going to continue to get more and more irrelevant. And if we're going to create the knowledge creators, not just the users, the innovators, like Ren said earlier, we have to be willing to make a revolution in assessment.